And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul Rienzo. Miss Jo Marie Moosey will be back with us next week. And my guest tonight is returning Paul Garrin, who is the internet entrepreneur from the East Village, Lower East Side, who knows so much about the internet. And I love to have him on because you're here to really discuss the inner workings of the net, how it works. And behind us we have an interesting thing, .nyc. I mean, we're all familiar with .com, .net, .org, .edu if you work in a school, .gov if you work for the government, .mil if you work for the military. But did you know that there's all these other dots? Well, a few more coming up. .info you see sometimes, .biz, B-I-Z. It's your name plus dot and a little three-letter word that sort of gives you a categorization of your website and your web page. Well, you know, that little dot and three-letter suffix there is more important, you might realize, for resolving your place on the internet and for folks having that access to the internet that we're always talking about here at MNN, and we're talking here about on Let Them Talk. You know, the fact that you know, are certain communities being locked out of the internet, and the importance of the internet is in our modern economy and our modern society. Well, Paul, I'm going to direct those questions to you. Why are those three little letters, .com, .biz, .org, .net, .info, all the ones we went through, .mil, you know, everything. Why, and now .nyc. Why is that so important, those three-letter, and do they have to be three letters? What are they called, top-level domains?
Top-level domains. First, Paul, thanks again for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be back here at Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
Us, yes.
And I'm always grateful of this community access television and my ability to come on and share what I know and what I've experienced with viewers. The domain system on the internet is something that goes back to the early days as the network began to scale, how to delegate administration of networks to local administrators. And a computer scientist named Paul Makapetris came up with the concept of the domain name system, which is essentially composed, as we generally see it, of a top-level domain and a second-level domain, for example, mnn.org. Right. Now, the way the domains are organized, and first let me step back. The importance of the domains is in helping computers find each other on the internet. It's a way to look up what's where, and also how to delegate the administration and organization of that to the local network and not have it as a centralized function. This makes, as the network...
That's interesting, because that's the key thing of the internet. A lot of folks don't understand is that the internet was designed to be survivable in case of nuclear war back in the bad old days of the Cold War. So therefore, if some hard enemy were to launch a nuclear missile strike and take out huge chunks of America, the chunks that remained would still be connected. Therefore, the country could reorganize and survive possibly such a hard, hopefully never happening.
And the beauty of that is these types of protocols that enable and allow the internet to scale. Now, what we're dealing with now specifically with the top-level domains...
Scale from small.
Scale to small to large and to be manageable.
So it could start like the initial internet started as a couple of small university locations that were doing research and development.
Right. The list of computers that needed to find each other was very finite.
And now how many are on the internet?
Well, I don't know the exact number.
Nobody knows.
But
millions.
As it grows, in fact, I'll point to an example in a little bit later in the show, how the internet address space also needs to grow in order to accommodate
phone numbers?
The larger, beyond that, but in order for there to accommodate a larger number of devices on the network. Now, the domain system is basically how to organize what's where. Everybody is familiar with a URL, right? So URL for a web address stands for Uniform or Universal Resource Locator. What that tells us is what is where. And generally, web address is preceded by the domain and then the other path on the local server, where does that information reside? So you asked the question, does it have to be three letters at the end? The answer to that is no. And the answer to that is that it can be any number of characters within reason at the top-level domain, and generally has been kind of limited only due to aesthetics, not due to any real technical reason. And let me bring that point up because since 1996, I started a project called NAME.SPACE. And NAME.SPACE was a way where small media could connect with big media
Yeah.
to create domain names, top-level domains, relatively with ease, because it's a relatively simple process, which I'll demonstrate in the next section.
Good.
To bring on, very simply, new domains like .art, .music, .sucks, .nyc, etc. And that would enable a way to create a funding source for alternate media. Now, the trouble is, this root of the internet, which defines all the top-level domains, is controlled by a small group of major corporate interests that want to prevent small media, local media, from benefiting.
How does it do that? I know that, sort of know the answer, but tell us the
Can we go to the next
Yes.
to the next screen?
Sure, we
if
can.
you can
I'll
assist
do
me on
that.
We're going to look at
I'll do that and give Paul here a chance to.
what defines the internet's root. I'm going to have to pull the chair out of the way. Paul, can you just
Scroll down or up.
what's that? That's
Push
back
that
of your
up. Oh,
chair.
yeah. Push your chair there. You
Yeah,
got
let me
it?
just
That's
get out of
that
the way
chair
here.
there. All right.
Okay. This is live cable access TV, so
That's the way
we've
it
got
should
to
be.
go on the fly. Okay, so here we go. If you look here, well, like I feel like the weatherman.
internet
At this part, can we see the left of that a little bit more?
Like
We're not
this.
seeing the full screen. Yeah, that's better. Okay.
All right. There.
If you look here,
Should I-
right there, you see
Yeah.
that's the dot. Dot
Okay.
is the root.
This thing
And
right
this,
here.
as you scroll down to the other side of that, it names the domain of the computers that serve the root database. This is essentially a replica of the file that runs, that every ISP uses in order to identify the location of the domain names.
Now I want to help people out there. ISP.
Internet Service Provider,
Those are the companies that you use to get on the
to
internet.
connect to the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what we see here is the dot is really the central database of all the top-level domains. And as we move across the line here, we see the domain name of the machines that answer to all domain queries. Then as we scroll down, we see these names repeated again, and then it's followed by an address. This is the IP address of those machines. And if we can see the
IP. What's the IP?
Internet Protocol address. Every computer is hard-coded with a domain and an IP address. The IP address is the hard-coded address of the machine.
When
that
you buy
allows
a
it to-
machine, it's got a number.
No,
associated
whenever
with
you
the machine.
connect to your service provider, you get assigned an IP address. But servers like Google or Yahoo or anything else, they have their IP addresses generally fixed, and they are mapped to the domain name. So how this database works is basically the dot is the central domain database. These domain names are the addresses of the name servers, and then this part here, where it restates the domain of the server and points to the IP address, establishes the relationship between the domain and the IP address of these machines. This is what's called glue. This means that nobody else can say that this a.root-servers.net is anything but this IP address. This is the authority. And if we look here, 4A's is an IP version 6 address. This is the new address space that's going to come out as part of Internet 2. As you can see, it's much more complex than this IP version 4 address that most people are familiar with. This actually, because it's becoming more complex, makes the domains even much more important because it becomes very difficult to remember what an IP version 6 address looks like. Now, if you can continue to scroll down, Paul, what we'll see now on this side is all the top-level domains. Yeah, you can go faster.